Today we're going to talk about consumer surplus, producer surplus, and economic surplus. And then we're going to see how market create value for buyers and sellers. This is the table of contents. Introduction. Let's begin by understanding what this topic is about. In every market, whether it's phones, food, or clothes, there are buyers and sellers who both benefit from this trade. When a buyer pays less than the maximum amount they were willing to pay or they were willing to spend, they get what we call consumer surplus. It's the extra happiness or satisfaction they get from this deal. On the other side, when a seller receives a price that is higher than what it costs them to produce the product, they get what we call producer surplus. This is their extra gain from selling the product. When we add these two together, we get what we call consumer surplus, which is the total benefit to the society. It shows how much value marketers create when a trade happens at the agreed price. And then this idea helps economists measure how efficient markets really are. Consumer surplus. Consumer surplus tells us how much consumers gain in satisfaction from a purchase. For, for example, let's say uh, we personally think we are willing to pay for something we really want, like concert ticket or a video game or a pair of shoes. It's actually its actual price turns out to be lower than what we were ready to pay. That's the difference in your gain, which is the consumer surplus. On this graph, the shaded area between the demand curve and the price line, it's larger when the price is lower or when buyers value the product highly. In other words, the more consumers value the good compared to what they pay, the greater their supply. For example, I'm gonna use iPhone for this. Uh imagine you have been saving for months and would happily pay up to 1,500 for the new model because you love the feature. But when you get to the store, the actual price was only 1,200. You still buy your phone that you want, but you also gain an extra of three $300. That's your consumer surplus. On this graph, you will see the demand curve showing willingness to pay, the price line at 1,200, and the area above that line is shaded as the consumer surplus. The example helps us, and this example will help you see the buyers benefit every time they get product or for less than their personal limit. Producer surplus. Producer surplus works the same way but from the seller side. It measures how much producer gain from selling something for more than it costs to make. If the cost of the production is lower than the market price, that's the difference because there's profit and reward. On this supply and demand graph, this appears as the area between the line and the supply curve. The line between the price and the supply curve. For example, it's if the market price is high, producers are motivated to sell more because each sales give them a bigger surplus. It's they're insensitive to say in a to stay in the business and produce efficiently. Let's see an example. Suppose each iPhone costs 900 to make, including labor, materials, and shipping. When Apple sells it for 1,200, they earn 300 more than what it costs to produce the product. That $300 is their producer surplus. And then on this graph, you will see the supply curve starting at 900 and the price line at the 1,200, and the shaded area between them represent producer supplies. This shows how business benefit when they can sell at a price above the cost. It's the reward or invita- invocation uh, of the production and efficiency. Economic surplus. Now, if we add both consumer and producer surplus together, we get economic surplus, which is represents the total value society gained from all the trades happening in the market. The equilibrium point, where supply equals demand, is the point where the total surplus is as large as possible. Any price higher or lower than that would reduce the total benefit because either some buyers would stop buying or some producers would stop selling. So economic surplus helps us see not just who benefits, but how efficiently the market works as a whole. Let's see that in a graph analyzing. This graph helps us visualize all the three concepts at once. The demand curve slopes downward, showing how buyers are willing to pay less as quantity increases. The supply curve slopes upward, showing producers need higher price to supply more. The point where they meet is the equilibrium, the price that balances both sides. The triangle above the equilibrium price is consumer surplus, and the one below it produce surplus. It's produce surplus. Together they form the total economic surplus, which represent the total gain from trade, both sides winning from voluntary exchange. Let's use a real world example. Let's use the iPhone market. The iPhone market is a greater example for economics. Economic surplus works. Millions of consumers buy iPhone because they see the value beyond the price. That's their consumer surplus. Apple earned a profit on each iPhone it sells. The producer surplus. That's the producer surplus. When you multiply this gain across millions of buyers and sellers, you get an economic. eh, You get an ins- ensuring total economic surplus. It's a perfect institution for how trades benefit both sides and how efficient market help create wealth and satisfaction for everyone involved. But there is a limitation. However, these models don't always fit perfectly in real life. The idea of consumers and producer surplus assumes a perfect competitive market where no single firm has control over price. In Apple's case, though brand's loyalty gives them market power, they can charge higher price because consumers trust and value their brand. That means consumer surplus is smaller than it would be in a more competitive market. The total economic surplus still exists, but it's disrupted eventually. Apple captures a much larger share and the buyers get a bit less benefit. This shows the modern limitation. It measures efficiency but not fairness. Conclusion. To wrap it up, consumer surplus shows the value buyers gain when they pay less than they're willing to pay. Producer surplus shows what sellers gain when they sell for more than it costs them to make. Economic surplus is the total benefit from both sides when the market is at equilibrium. This total surplus is as large as possible, meaning the market is working efficiently. This idea reminds us why trade, fair pricing, and balance between buyers and sellers are so important. That's how market create values, efficiency, and opportunity to everyone. That's it. Thank you.